Welcome to Music Ed Insights.
Hey, we're sitting here at the Group Dynamic booth here at the Iowa Bandmasters Association Convention, where we recorded this episode in front of a live audience this morning. Steve, tell us about today's guest.
Rodney Dorsey is professor of music at Florida State University, where he conducts the FSU Wind Orchestra and guides the graduate wind conducting program. Dorsey is on the board of directors for Music for All and the Midwest Clinic, where he currently serves as president.
This was the first session of the conference schedule, and he had a lot to offer everyone in attendance, from how to do a conference to programming to work-life balance. We're not editing this as we usually do, so you're going to hear our entire raw conversation audio. So it's a little longer than usual, but we think it's worth it.
Rodney Dorsey, welcome to the program. Well, we are at the Iowa Bandmasters Association conference in Des Moines, Iowa, and that kind of got me thinking, with our conference and your involvement with the Midwest Clinic, that conferences are getting more difficult for teachers to attend. They are more expensive, and the school districts are making it a little bit more difficult for teachers to get leave time. So do you think conferences are still worthy? Like, why, if I am teaching in a very difficult setting where my students don't play very well, why should I spend the time and money to go to the Midwest Clinic or the Iowa Bandmasters Association conference to hear bands way better than mine playing repertoire I'll never be able to play with my group?
That's a great question. And it's a pleasure for me to be here with everyone today. One word comes to mind is inspiration. I think it's important for teachers of any age, young teachers, teachers like myself with a lot of gray hair. It's easy to get stuck in a rut in the job and to believe you're the only person that has problem A, B, or C. You're the only person that has budget issues. And when you get around a group of like-minded, hopefully positive people, you start to learn that I'm not the only one going through this. And that's one plus. But then the other plus is just the inspiration from the performances. One of the things that at Midwest we like to we showcase new music. And for every 4, 5, and 6 composition that a public school band plays, they have to play a 1, 2, or a 3. So
you're talking grade level
difficulty. Right. So if I'm a middle school teacher, I should be able to hear music my band can play surely at the middle school concerts and the high school concerts. So that's one good thing. And you know, to be honest, I attended Midwest for the first time in 1988. It was my first year of teaching, and I was told by the previous band director, you should go to this. Now, I'd never been before, which now I see college students and high school students attending Midwest, and I think, wow, I didn't get that information until much later on. But I remember that first year of just being amazed at the playing level. And my band was nowhere close to as good as the groups I heard from. Just pick a state, any state. So you could look at it from the standpoint of, my group will never play like that, so why should I be exposed to it? But I always say, you know, if I've never driven a Lamborghini, but I think it can go faster than 80 miles an hour. So if I'm exposed to that and see what's possible, then I'm motivated to hopefully make myself better and my students better.
That theme of I'm not the only person having this problem, that was something when Alan and I started the podcast about 3 years ago, we did not anticipate. That's probably one of the things we get the most listener feedback about when we have a guest on or a listener writes in and we share something and people say, oh, it is nice to know that it's not just me. I'm not doing something wrong. Lots of people are facing these difficulties.
It's not. And it's easy, especially when you first start to teach, to think you're the only person that doesn't know A, B, or C. I'm a clarinet player. My trumpets don't sound good. I'm a terrible teacher. I should quit. No, we all struggle. I still struggle with issues. I don't have all the answers. I've just made more mistakes. and hopefully learn from those mistakes. So I think, information like this out to people is really good.
A lot of that commiserating and the we're not alone in this vibe comes from things in the hallway, things after hours, meal times. We're here at the very beginning of this conference. We got another 2.5 days of action. We got about 200 people in the room who are ready for advice on this, more or less. What's the right balance? So let's say this is my first or second conference. How should I map out my time, and how much sleep should I intend to get, and where's the best networking? How many clinics should I go to? How should I map out my time?
Wow. Maybe take a bit of a self-assessment, at the beginning of the week. What are my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? Where do I need to build? I think back, I started teaching high school in Florida. I'm a clarinet player. My weaknesses were brass, percussion, anything. How do I make the trumpet sound better? Mm-hmm. I tried my one or two things they taught me in college. Well, maybe three. I went to a really good school, and they don't work. Mm-hmm. So now what do I do?
Yeah, right.
So you go to you go to those clinics. Hopefully your conference, and literally I just got here and everyone's been very nice. Hopefully if you're new, people are nice to you and you can make friends and learn from them.
Yeah, let's not underestimate how nice people are and how nice people are willing to be. I remember being a young band director 35 years ago or whatever it was, and seeing the legendary people. I'm like, oh boy, I'd love a minute to talk to that person right there. That person right there is probably totally cool talking to you. You can go up to Dr. Rodney Dorsey and say, Dr. Dorsey, can I just talk to you for 4 minutes? And you'd probably say, let's make it 8.
Right. I absolutely. And it's funny. I remember my mom would tell me the same thing. I'd say, oh, there's so-and-so, they're this great band conductor. And she goes, well, why don't you go up and meet him? I'm like, well, maybe I should. No, just go up and introduce yourself to him. And the first time that happened was the very first band concert I ever went to in Gainesville, Florida, where I grew up. And it was a University of Florida band, and their guest was Bill Ravelli from the University of Michigan. And I went back because my mom's like, well, just go back and get his autograph. And I did. And he signed my program, William D. Ravelli, and I still have it.
Cool.
Yeah.
For those of us who are either organizing a conference or maybe on a smaller scale, we've just been tasked with organizing a couple hours of professional development, maybe for our school or our district. What recommendations do you have for making the most of that?
If it's new, or even if it's not new, get some feedback from the teachers that are in the district. One of the things I try to do is to try to remember what it was like to be a new teacher, remember what it was like to be a freshman in college and high school, to try to not, as I continue to age, to not get so distanced from that I don't remember what that felt like. And I remember going to in-services as a high school band director, because I taught for 8 years of high school before I started teaching college, of thinking, here is this thing that they think I should be interested in, and this is, I am not going to do any of this. It wasn't music related. I was, trying to slyly do music planning things in the background. So try to get some feedback from the teachers. What do you want us to present? And try to go at it from that standpoint. One of the things about Midwest is we try to make sure we're staying relevant. It's easy to just think you're offering things that people want and need, and then the people are like, I wish you had more of this, this, and this. And then you go, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. So, we're trying to stay connected to to the pulse of working teachers, because it's been a long time since I was a high school band director. I mean, I'm out in band rooms and I have friends that teach, but I'm not out there every day and dealing with those situations. So I think relevance is really important, because if people come to something, and especially like you said earlier, if they're going to pay, they're going to spend their time and their money, the return on investment needs to be good enough so that they want to come back, that we're just not presenting things that are one-offs, or, at the district level that you have to attend and you just have no choice.
Yeah, I've been very impressed the last few years with the Midwest Clinic offerings, where it's clear that you have asked and listened, because I think 15, 20 years ago I was not seeing help. I also have to teach choir clinics or success in a Title I school, those types of things. Has the response from the participants at the conference, have they noticed that there's been a shift in the types of things being offered? Do the participants think you're staying relevant?
I hope so. One of the things that we talked about from a marketing standpoint is to make sure we're telling people what we're changing, because sometimes you can change things and people may not notice it. If it's from an infrastructure or registration standpoint, all of a sudden, well, there's not that long line. Okay, that might be obvious, but other things might not be as noticeable. And I have to say, the office staff has been great about doing this. Kelly Bell, who's here this week, has been just fantastic about making sure we do regular surveys to our attendees, and Amanda, our marketing person in-house, they're great at looking at the data and presenting it to us in a way that we can get it and understand it. Like, oh, they need more of this. Let's see if we can get that to happen.
So you mentioned your first Midwest clinic in 1988, I believe, and you mentioned your gray hairs. So you have outed yourself as having done this for a while. I'm
Right.
not accusing you of being old.
No, it's okay.
What are some of the most significant changes you have seen in the profession? Could be good or bad.
Right. I think students now, high school students, are way more busy than they were when I was in high school. I was your prototypical band geek. I did band in high school. I took clarinet lessons. I played in youth orchestra, and that was it. I was on a bowling league for a while, but then I dropped that because bowling was Saturday morning and it was hard getting up after Friday night football, so I stopped doing that. I was involved in student council, but only vice president because that job wasn't as big as president. So I was just focused on music. Even when I started teaching in 1988, and I taught for 8 years, I started to see students just get just way more busy. They were playing sports in addition to music, and now I think the academic stress on students is so strong. Man, I want to make sure I get into the best university, so I've got to get tutoring and da-da-da-da-da. It just seems to be a lot pulling on students. And, I feel like high school should be a time for students to try a lot of different things. I had students in my last job, sports, and I wanted them to do that.
Yeah.
Flute player. She was a starting catcher on the softball team, and I always would just hope and pray before concerts she wouldn't break anything.
Right.
But I think that's a time for them to do that. So hopefully, we can manage students' time in a way that band isn't all consuming, that they can try different things, because this might be the only time they can actually do it.
Yeah, as we've been doing this podcast over the last 3 years, that's something we have also picked up on, is this notion of, if we expect everybody to be into choir, into orchestra, into band, and kind of go all in and maintain a super high standard of excellence, that is denying the reality of how busy some of these a lot of these students are, and that well-roundedness that they bring to the program might impact how much we get to see them, but it's a good impact overall. Right? Is that part of what you're saying?
Right. And I think we just need to be mindful of just how we're using students' time.
Yep.
And it, I don't know how competitive marching band is in Iowa. I know how it is in Florida, and it can be really, really intense.
Mm-hmm.
Drum corps is not marching band is not drum corps, but it seems like sometimes high school marching band winds up being drum corps in terms of just the competition schedule. Is just like every weekend they're either at a contest or at an all-day camp rehearsal. So when do you have any time to do anything else? And hopefully we're not burning them out.
Right.
I hope.
So if you're recommending we encourage students to participate in lots of things, we don't burn them out, and I come back at you and say, all right, well then I'm going to have to teach them less. I'm going to have less contact time. I'm going to have fewer rehearsals. We'll play repertoire that is not as difficult. You say?
Well, I look back at my last high school job, and now this didn't do anything for me, but I tried to figure out a schedule where students didn't have to be at school every day after school, especially after marching season. And, we traditionally had at least one night a week where the concert band would rehearse, a sectional. So that was an evening and then one day after school. But then at that job, I was the only director, but who had to be there every day? I did. So I was trying to construct something that the student didn't have to be there 5 days a week after school, but then there's the whole thing of, well, I have to be here to teach them. I just think my colleague I work with at Florida State, Pat Dunnigan, is a big advocate for lifelong music making. He conducts a community band. He plays in a community jazz band. And he always talks about he hopes that we are teaching students to be lifelong makers of art and lifelong musicians. And if everything is just so intense and so, and I also think it's how we as an individual approach this. I mean, if I go into something and it is so high stress and I come across like the stakes are just life and death,
yeah,
that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I want to create an atmosphere in my classroom, and I've never felt like people do their best work in fear. I just haven't. From first job to FSU Wind Orchestra with doctoral students, I don't want them to be afraid of what might happen to them, either from the podium or anywhere else, if they make a mistake. We all make mistakes. Life is managing our mistakes. And I think through the whole recording process, there is this illusion of live performance has to come off like a recording of perfection.
Yeah. I'm trying to decide to do a statement or a question. Can't we also, during the limited time, because we respect their time, during that limited time, without creating a culture and atmosphere of fear or saying the stakes are super high, we can still do some really hardcore teaching and maintain really high standards and get a lot of work done? Partly because we're respecting their time, then we can say that, hey, we're not here very often, so when we're here, let's work our tails off because it's fun to be good, not because the stakes are high.
Right. And we're in a society now where like attention spans are pretty short. I mean, really short.
Totally.
I mean, you ask a high school student, you should sit down and listen to that full Brahms symphony. I said Brahms, not Mahler or anything like that. And are people doing that? Are humans doing that? Do I have to make sure I just sit down and listen to something front to back and not just like a snippet of it. I think about this all the time. I look around and I think, I wonder if Steve Jobs actually thought about how he would change our society when he invented the smartphone. I mean, I noticed it when I was teaching at Michigan. There was a hallway, long hallway. Academic classes were letting out in the music school, theory, history. Students were hitting the hallway and immediately looking at their phones. Every student out the hall. And I thought, wow. Mm-hmm. And our students, you just, actually, people that run businesses must love it because we have something to do if we're waiting. If it's I'm sorry, it's going to be a 45-minute wait for your table, people don't care because they're barely talking to each other, but they're on their phone, so 45 minutes just goes by quick.
Can knock out some emails.
Right.
And check out some cat videos. Yeah.
So, but are we talking to each other? Are students learning to get along with each other? And I don't know. It's a useful tool, but I hope it's not, eroding some just social skills. Yeah.
We've got some questions from the audience, all of whom are anonymous, so that's cool. I'll ask them. We are all in a profession that demands a lot from us, time and energy. How have you, Rodney, navigated a healthy work-life balance over the course of your career? And do you have advice you can offer directors still struggling to find that balance? How have you done it? What advice have you got?
Well, let me see. I was terrible at it. My first job, 3 years.
Who can relate?
Job 1, 4.
Yeah, okay, there we go. Let the record show that nearly 400 hands went up with that.
Right. The audience is growing. So the first 6 years of my career after I graduated, I was terrible at it. I taught for 3, went back to school for a year for my master's, and then had another job for a year, and then moved back to Florida to teach. And it was there that I realized I had no hobby. It was just schoolwork. I was single. I wasn't married at the time. And for some reason, I just said I should have a hobby, and I started playing golf. Now, I started playing golf the way you should never pick up any activity. I just bought some clubs, golf balls, and just started
What's wrong with
balls.
that?
Okay, and I think if a student wanted to play trumpet, would I hand them a trumpet, a book, and some recordings and go, once you have this figured out on your own, come back and play in band? I wouldn't do that, right? But that's what I did. So I just started hacking away, and at least it got me outside doing something. Now, what did I do? Every Wednesday, I played 9 holes with 3 other band directors. So we tried to, there was a little bit of band director therapy happening, oh, you have that problem too? Okay. And then, but once I let go of wanting to be good at golf without lessons or practice, I enjoyed it much, much more. So I found a hobby that helped a lot. Just being outside, and that just really helped me a lot. Also, during that same time, I realized that while what we do is important, it's important to individual students, it's important to our communities. In the bigger world, it's not that important. My mom got sick when I was in my last high school job, and it was a weird time. I taught at school for 4 years. The first year, our principal died right outside our band room. He had a heart attack. Ugh. He was in his mid-50s. Second year, my grandmother died. She was 98, so she had lived a great life. And the third year, my mom died. And through all of that, I realized that what I do is important, but there are other things that are more important. And the week she was very ill and she passed away, we were supposed to go to a marching competition. The band went, the band performed, the band did fine. I wasn't there. And that was a sign to me. It's like, man, this can go on without me. Yeah. And also, it just makes you rethink what's really important. And now it's been a while since I've taken a real vacation. I need to do that. But now I'm married. We don't have kids, but my wife is a nurse. That's something else that gives me great perspective. She worked with a spine surgeon in Chicago for over 20 years. If I drop a beat during a concert, everybody gets off the stage and walks home. Yeah. If Steve Margecco in Chicago messes up during spine surgery. So I just have these weird ways of having perspective on things. But I think it's important that we find something we're passionate about or just as passionate about outside of our classrooms as we do music.
Yeah. Or casually interested in enough to grab some clubs and hit some balls.
Yeah, please. Yeah. Have a hobby.
Seems like it really might be a rite of passage for all of us to get this advice, to have good work-life balance, not take the job too seriously, and ignore all of that advice for our first 5 or 10 or more years. I feel like that is maybe one of those things that you just kind of have to figure out on your own. The smartest people in the world can tell you not to do it, but when you are first getting started and you want to prove yourself to everybody and you want the students to have the best possible experience, it's pretty difficult to listen to that advice. It's difficult to listen to all advice, but program this for large group contests, that's a little bit easier than don't spend so much time at work and don't worry if your band isn't quite as good as a result.
Well, the problem is, one of the problem is that, and I'm a college teacher now, if we actually kept music majors, especially music ed majors, in school as long as we should, it would be like being a medical doctor. So I was on the 5-year plan in school. I went to a very good school. I went to Florida State from undergrad, and I got out. And the first couple of weeks, there was this list. Why didn't anybody tell me about this? Why didn't they tell me about this? Why didn't they tell me about this? They forgot to tell me. I didn't know this was going to be in it. And luckily for me, my first job was in Tallahassee. It was the same town. And I'm just calling my professors going, why didn't you tell me about this? And he's just smiling at me, like probably thinking, well, you probably would have changed your major if we told you. But I think we prepare students to have a firm foundation and do no harm. But yeah, there is that learning on the job and getting through that. And I also think that seeing someone else across town spends X amount of hours, well, I have to spend that amount or more. Maybe not. No, maybe not.
We're going to return to the subject of conferences a bit. We got a question from somebody in the room. I got a follow-up, too, if we have time.
Great.
Kind of a niche thing. But here's the question from somebody in the room. Are there any things that conferences can do to break the perception or the reality that conferences are built for and by the good old boy network?
Oh, jeez.
How do we get rid of that perception or potentially the reality?
Gosh, that's a good question.
By my estimation, there are 7 good old boys in the room.
Well, I think if the question comes from the standpoint of newer voices trying to break into either clinic sessions or being heard, there's a couple of things. If you want to present at conferences, you should apply. If you've applied and haven't been accepted, you should continue to apply. if you've applied and haven't been accepted and haven't talked to people to ask for feedback on either your application or a session that you've presented somewhere else, you should. I feel like, at least at Midwest, there's people who present every year that and I know part of this because I'm just getting older and older, but I think there's younger people presenting, but there's perception and then there's reality, and sometimes your perception is correct. Mm-hmm. It just is.
I guess part of the point of the question.
It just is. You try to put forth something you think is relevant, and it might be relevant to you, but it might not be relevant to as many people. Every year we get way more performance applications and way more clinic applications than we can present and put forward. Way more. Our processes, at least at Midwest, I think are much better now. More eyes looking at applications than we've had, just because we divide the work up amongst everybody and then come together and present everything to the group as a whole. But I would say just keep at it. Talk to people. I talk to people that have presented. Hey, I've applied this many times and this hasn't been presented. Can you look at this application or this clinic outline and tell me what's missing? Try to get some feedback, and just stay at it.
I'll add something to that too. I think there is a reality that there's a good old boys network influencing so much of what we do. I also think it's true that many of the established figures in our field might be introverted. And back to Alan's point earlier, it's if you go up to them and introduce yourself and ask questions, you're going to find them to be very nice and warm and welcoming. And those folks might not go out of their way to go make small talk with you in the bar or after a concert or after a session. And it's not because they are stuck up or don't want to talk to you. It's just they maybe are, even as accomplished as they are, a little bit shy. At least that has been when I finally kind of worked my way into like, oh, I'm finally hanging with the important people now. And I realized, oh, they weren't really excluding me before at all. It was just this is just kind of their personality.
Well, and also, use your network. If you know someone that knows someone else who can, get you in touch with someone, do that. Our world, our business is frighteningly small. Frighteningly small. You never know how far someone is away from someone else. That's why it's good to just don't talk bad about people. Seriously, you don't know.
And let me offer a parallel that I think everybody can relate to in the room. It's the first day of band or the first day of band camp, depends on what level you teach. And you really wish that some of the older and or cooler and or better students would mingle more with some of the younger students, the less included students, the less cool students, rather than talk to each other. But it's their first day back at school, and they're seeing their friends and their favorite people again. I think you can come to a conference like this, and it might look like we're clicking up a little bit. We've all had a year, and then we're finally going to get to see some of our favorite people again. We don't stop and think, hey, who's standing alone in the registration line, or who's eating by themselves over here, the way that we wish our students would, right? So I think it is incumbent upon the ones who are less shy to maybe think about that. If we want to make this a more inclusive place, a more welcoming place, that's just one way to do it. But it's hard to fight against, oh my gosh, Brad, we only see each other once a year, and this is it, baby. I want to talk to you.
It's funny you mentioned that. My mom would come to a lot of the football games when I was a high school band director, and I noticed she would always talk to the kids who weren't in larger groups. There might be a group of 3, 4 students kind of off. She would always go over and engage them in conversation. Just talk to them, what's your name? And maybe eventually get around to, well, why are you guys sitting over here by yourself? Mm-hmm. But she was a teacher, so, she realized.
Got it.
Yeah, she got it.
Mm-hmm.
Shifting to programming for a bit, there's been a much-needed push for music teachers to consider diversifying their programming. And for teachers with more advanced ensembles, I think they have plenty of options. I'm curious what advice you have for programming as it pertains to developing bands. So in other words, elementary or middle school bands or high school bands who maybe don't have great instrumentation or technical proficiency. Because I think it's getting better, but those groups still unfortunately do not have quite as many options to choose from.
Right. And that's just been the case for years. Especially with like really good quality music. Now composers are just churning out music so fast. It can be a little bit problematic. I think one of the good things there's many good things about being a band director is there's so much new music being written for us. And I think that I worked with Don DeRoche at DePaul, and one of the things he talked about constantly about programming was you have to be very diligent about finding new music. And I mentioned the whole smartphone thing. We have access to so much information now. It's a little bit easier to find it, but there are. I'm trying to think of there's a website totally devoted to diverse music for younger groups, and I can't remember something about voices. Heard something.
Somebody out there, Google it and text it to me.
Something like this green background on the website, but there are things like resources like this out for teachers now that can at least help them get pointed in a direction, because I think that's important. I'm almost sure between the time I started band in middle of 4th grade, probably through college, I don't remember playing music, original compositions by composers that look like me. I'm almost sure I didn't. So, and if you're a female and you've been in band, how many times have you played music by a female composer? I think that's important, and I think there are resources out there. Granted, I don't do a lot of music like that, but I do know composers like Kevin Day and such are doing easier pieces because they're being commissioned to do easier pieces. And that's the other thing too, that middle schools are commissioning composers to write for them, and so we get music more programs can play.
I'd like to thank the 3 people in the room who have let us know that the website you were looking for is And We Were Heard. andwewereheard.org, O-R-G /resources.
And it is a green background. See,
you had that. You had that, right.
Yeah, branding matters.
Thanks, Googlers.
Thanks.
Yes, leaving our listeners with some practical advice and help here. But we cannot let you go without our lightning round of the most difficult questions you are going to encounter all weekend. Are you ready?
Sure. Bring it on.
All right. What's the best restaurant in Tallahassee?
Oh, my gosh.
I told you it was tough.
The Hummingbird.
What kind of cuisine?
It's actually a wine bar.
All right.
But they have food.
You're speaking my language.
So very receptive room for that one.
There's food. They do have food.
How about a piece of music, a composer, or performer that you wish more people knew about?
How about a piece?
Yeah.
It's an old piece, and it's not for band.
Yeah, even better. We got plenty of band here today.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, let's mix it up.
Strauss's Four Last Songs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I cry every time.
Yeah, beautiful.
How about a favorite film or TV series you've enjoyed recently?
Wow, my wife watches way more TV than I do.
So her favorite film or TV series she's enjoyed recently?
TV. Designated Survivor.
That works?
That's fun.
Yeah.
How about the most memorable live music performance you've attended?
I've attended, or have I been a part of, conducted it?
If you conducted it, you were attending, I guess. So
Okay.
we'll allow it.
Gosh, the last concert we did, my group at FSU did. It was pretty special.
Yeah? What'd you program?
Oh my gosh, what did we program?
Told you I'm
Told you it's
relentless with
hard.
These lightning round questions.
No, what did we? Oh, okay. We and this is not in order. We did Stephen Bryant's Concerto for Wind Ensemble. That was the second half. First half, we did Viet Quang's Second Nature sax quartet with band, with the H2 quartet. Toccata Martial, Vaughan Williams, and a piece by Ricardo Lorenz called El Muro.
All right, and finally, a book recommendation for the audience. Bonus if it doesn't have anything to do with music, but it's okay if it does have to do with music too. And then we'll let you go.
It's a book I'm reading now, because I'm notorious for starting books but not finishing them.
I'm with you.
I believe I can actually finish this, and I can't remember the author's name, but it's Catching the Big Fish. He's a film director, and he's talking about creativity and how meditation has helped him with creativity. It's pretty interesting so far. Very, very finishable and doable. Like a chapter in this book is like a half page. So it's awesome. I can actually do it.
Dr. Rodney Dorsey, thank you so much for coming on Music Ed Insights. It's been wonderful to hear from you, and we're looking forward to the next couple of days with you at the Iowa Bandmasters Association Conference. Thank you very much to our live audience. Appreciate it. Thanks for listening to Music Ed Insights.
We're supported by Group Dynamic, a leading provider of youth leadership workshops. Alan works with dozens of schools each year to help develop their leaders. Learn more at groupdynamicyouth.com.
Or you could email me at alan@groupdynamic.net. Also sponsored by the Co-College Music Education Program. They've got a website too.
Just click their link at our website or email me at shanley@coe.edu.
Also, The Normal Design, helping normal companies and people create memorable, meaningful, and professional designs and branding. More at thenormaldesign.com.
And Winterset Websites, website design and maintenance. wintersetwebsites.com.
Our Facebook page is Music Ed Insights.
Our website has program notes, links, and a one-page download of this episode's key takeaways. That's on musicedinsights.com.
You can expect a new episode most Mondays during the school year.
Get current.
Stay relevant.
Music Ed Insights.